America's top military general has warned that a Russian invasion of Ukraine would be horrific and would lead to significant casualties. General Mark Milley described the build-up of 100,000 Russian troops near Ukraine's border as the largest since the Cold War. But the US Defense Secretary Lloyd said conflict could still be avoided through the use of diplomacy. Russia denies it plans to invade Ukraine. Here in the UK, Downing Street has announced plans for the Prime Minister to travel to Eastern Europe next week as Britain steps up diplomatic efforts to help resolve the crisis. Boris Johnson is also expected to have a call with Russian President Vladimir Putin. Simon Jones has this report.
Preparing for a possible war. Britain is already bolstering Ukraine's defences. Ukrainian soldiers are being trained to use anti-tank missiles provided by the UK. Boris Johnson says he's determined to do all he can to avoid bloodshed. He'll visit the region in the coming days. And he'll call President Putin with the message, Russia needs to step back and engage diplomatically. At a meeting here at the Ministry of Defence, top officials outlined a range of options to counter what's being described as growing Russian aggression in the region. One option would see more British troops sent to reinforce NATO defences. That's something Boris Johnson will consider over the weekend. The US too is sending equipment to Ukraine, and some soldiers will shortly be moved to Eastern Europe. The US says the Russian troop build-up on Ukraine's border is the largest since the Cold War.
Given the type of forces that are arrayed, the ground maneuver forces, the artillery, the ballistic missiles, the air forces, all of it packaged together, if that was unleashed on Ukraine, it would be significant. It would be horrific. It would be terrible. And it's not necessary, and we think a diplomatic outcome is the way to go here.
But Russian training exercises continue. President Putin reportedly told the French president that he had no plans for an offensive, but he said the US and NATO had failed to address Russia's main demands for NATO forces to withdraw from Eastern Europe. Boris Johnson, though, is warning that if diplomacy fails, thousands of lives could be lost. Simon Jones, BBC News.
Well, for more on the build-up of Russian forces along the Ukrainian border, I've been speaking to Mikey Kay, a retired senior RAF officer and former advisor to Britain's Ministry of Defence. I began by asking him what Russia would have to gain from an invasion of Ukraine.
I think the answer in terms of what they stand to gain from it, Samantha, is not a lot. I mean, I've done multiple combat tours in Iraq and Afghanistan, Kosovo, both under the NATO guise, and also a master's in warfighting from King's College. And I can tell you right now that, when warfare occurs, diplomacy has failed. Warfare is the blunt tool that is used when, talks fail and diplomacy doesn't work. So, and people just get killed unnecessarily. So that's not what anyone wants. I think there's a really interesting component of Gabriel's report here in terms of him articulating what they were allowed to have access to. And that's very much in conventional terms. We're talking about Russian tanks, we're talking about anti-tank missiles. But I think there's a lot we can learn from contemporary history here in terms of the way that Russia operates and the way that warfare is evolving. And it's not on a conventional basis. It's on a hybridized basis. And I think what we should be really looking at in terms of what Putin's next move is going to be is what his moves have been in recent past. And two good areas to look at are the way that he intervened in Crimea and why he intervened in Crimea. And that was because of a military strategic objective, which were the two bases, or the bases in Sebastopol, which is on the Crimean Peninsula. And they gave him access both to naval power and air power to the Black Sea. So that was absolutely critical for Putin to keep that. And then the other interesting case study is the way that Putin intervened in Syria and just turned up one day in Western Syria and Latakia with Russian jets at one of the air bases there. And again, the strategic principle there was the prevention of, in my opinion, was the prevention of terrorism moving northwards through the North Caucasus. So I think if Putin was going to move on Eastern Ukraine, he would have moved already. And then we've got to ask ourselves, well, what are the strategic objectives by doing what he is doing at the moment? You've also got to remember that if any warfare does occur in Eastern Ukraine, Samantha, that it's not just about warfare. There's a holding component here, and to be able to hold a piece of territory, you need far more military apparatus than being able to invade a piece of territory. And we've seen that in Iraq and Afghanistan, and quite frankly, it hasn't gone well.